Okay, so now I can relax a little more and talk to you guys about what I what I liked, what I didn't like about the book. This book has a 5-star rating from me. So even though I will bring up certain things that I did not like in the book, I will explain why, despite the fact that I didn't like this or this, it still gets a 5-star rating. Okay, the first and most obvious thing that I did not like about this book is that Kelsia died. Kelsia becomes this. Oh my gosh. Kelsia is just this great guy. And I have so much love for him. He's so not only charismatic, but he takes Vin, after everything she's gone through, under his wing. And he's just. Oh, he's amazing. I always looked at Kelsia as like an older brother type to Vin, but apparently he was playing the role of a father to a daughter type, and that works for both him and Vin. There's more that I can say about Kelsia, and I'll just very quickly explain it. Kelsia had a wife, but unfortunately, she ended up dying. The reason there is a reason, and that is a big reason, but I'm not going to go into that because I don't need to explain this. Kelsey had a wife, she ended up dying, and they both wanted to have a child. Kelsey ends up telling Vin that she would have been, the perfect daughter basically for him and his wife. And that's just a really touching moment as well. And he tells her this in the letter that he wrote her, knowing that he was going to die. Why I don't like that he died is because he is the second main character of the book. For a while I thought he was the main character, but he's the second main character of the book, and he is such a great support for Vin, but also for me. He was this sense of comfort for me. Everything was okay as long as as long as Kelsia was around. Ellen's a different story. Everything was okay as long as Kelsia was around, and now suddenly Kelsia is dead, and this is where I wanted to blast at Brandon Sanderson. I was reading this earlier today, and I totally understand the film Misery and Kathy Bates' character. I've not read the book, but I've seen the film. Because, yeah, let's tie Brandon Sanderson to a bed and I will break his legs. I'm sorry if that's a spoiler for you. It's only the beginning of the book, though, so hopefully that's fine. But this is spoiler stuff anyway, so. Yeah, I wanted to do that to Brandon Sanderson. Like, okay, here we go. Misery Part 2, Mr. Francy versus Brandon Sanderson, because he killed Kelsia. I was very pissed off. However, the reason why I still give the book a 5-star rating, despite the fact that it's not that I disliked it, I hated the fact that Brandon Sanderson killed Kelsia. It actually made sense and was explained as to why he needed to die. If it was just explained as an author's note that Kelsia needed to die to give everyone the courage and confidence to fight, as in everyone in the thieving crew, excuse me, the courage and confidence to fight, I wouldn't have accepted that because that's a trope that I've heard before. No. But it was always Kelsia's plan to die. He knew he was going to. So as much as when we experienced this battle, well, not that it really was a battle, because Kelsia didn't really fight, but as much as we experienced this battle, the first time we do, we think, it's sad. We don't know that Kelsia planned on dying, but he did. It was his plan all along. And his death achieved what he wanted to achieve out of it. And it was a very selfless death. If you have not read this book, you're probably thinking, well, there's nothing really selfless about suicide. It wasn't suicide, though. It wasn't. It's just that he just didn't fight back against the Lord Ruler. So, yeah, but it did serve its purpose. It does make sense as to why it had to happen, and I do accept the reason why it had to happen, knowing what we end up learning post his death still within the plot. Where if it was not explained in the plot, and then Brandon Sanderson wrote an author's note saying, this is why I had to do it, no, I wouldn't have accepted that. But yes, it made sense. It had to happen, absolutely. Also, it had to happen in order for Vin to be the one to kill the Lord Ruler, because if Kelsier was still alive, and I don't know if Brandon Sanderson says this, but it just makes sense, and it's just something I innately know from reading the book. If Kelsier hadn't have died, Kelsier would have had to have been the one to... He would have jumped in, because he loves Vin like a daughter, so he would have jumped in and shoved her aside and taken the Lord Ruler on himself. And yeah, Vin had to be the one to defeat him. It makes the most sense that she had to be the one to do it. The second thing I didn't like so much about it was that there was a little bit, only a little bit, but a little bit of a lull towards the end, where I started getting just a little bit, not a lot at all, but just a little bit tired of the same random conversations of, how are things going for you? Good. Here's my update. How are things going for you? Good. Oh, that's good. I wonder what Kelsey is going to get us to do today. I kind of got a little bit over that, and I felt that towards the end, there's an obvious lull. I don't know. I just didn't appreciate it. But other than that, I mean, when I first read Cameron physically abusing Vin, I don't remember her name, physically abusing Vin, I didn't like it at all. But the ends justify the means. Vin's story arc is an amazing story arc, and what my the booktuber that I follow said in her review, and it's very true, is that from where she came from to where she is by the end of the book, it's amazing to read the arc and to see the transformation that she goes through. We would not have, or I would not have appreciated her transformation as much, and I'm just saying this personally, if we didn't have that scene. Having that scene allowed us to see how she was actually being treated, because we got to read in the book blow for blow exactly what he was doing to her. So I appreciated it from that angle. Okay, 7 minutes in, let's get into what I loved about this book. I loved that there is heavy, high magic system. Yes, it's referred to as allomancy and feruchemy, but if we're going to have a subcategory for fantasy and call it magic, the magic system is extreme high. High magic, it's used all the time. I don't know if there's a single chapter that goes by where there isn't some kind of magic used. And if there is, it's only because she's at the ball, and I loved the whole ball situation. Yeah, very, very intriguing. But anyway, so much magic used throughout this book that it's not a fantasy, it's just a medieval sword-on-sword combat, boring, riding around on horses. I don't want to read that because it's human. So much magic used in this book. Absolutely love that. Love how the magic was explained as well. Loved how there were limitations on the magic. If you don't do A, B, C, D, E in that order, you will not be able to use the magic. It's just not going to work. So I loved the limitations, the rules, the way that it works. I loved that. I loved the world building. So part of the fantasy of this world in the final Empire world in Mistborn is the grass. I'm going to talk about the grass, and then I'm going to talk about a different version of snow. But anyway, we'll get to it. And if you've read the book, you know what I'm going to say. The grass is brown, and the plants and trees are like orange and brown as well. And you can tell how normal this is at a certain point when Kelsier shows Vin a picture of a flower whose stems and leaves are green. And she's like, green? green. Like, who could even think up such a thing of a stem and leaves being green? Because it's just not in this world. Now, here's part of the reason why. One of the most used lines by Brandon Sanderson, this is something I didn't like. And there are a lot of people that love this line, but if it was used once or twice, I would have been okay with it, but it was used many times, was ash was falling from the sky. It is a fantasy world, but if you want to relate to something human, ash falls as often, if not more often, than rain or snow. Like, ash just continues to fall from the sky, and it is normal. So part of the scar's work is to sweep and clear away the ash. But because ash is, well, pretty much from what we can tell, it's constantly falling, they have to constantly be clearing away the ash. Anyway, I loved the caste, CASTE /class system in this book, because it was really good to see the dynamics and how they were playing out. Despite the fact that we, the thieving crew that Vin is a part of, we aren't working directly with an Inquisitor or an Obligator or the Lord Ruler, we still get to see and hear the ways of the Inquisitor, the Obligators, and the Lord Ruler. I definitely appreciate the nobleman. It's not old-fashioned English, but it is perfect, crisp English. There is no slang used by noblemen. And if there is, it's because they're, I don't know, they're being humorous. Or maybe they're putting someone down. But they speak perfect, clear, crisp English. And I do love that. And then we have the word that I keep forgetting, the terracemen. There we go, I remembered it this time. And from what I've seen, the terracemen do speak pretty good English as well. It's just that when we look at Sazed, who is the terraceman that we follow in this book, he says mistress a lot to Vin. In fact, every time he talks to her, he calls her Mistress Vin. And when he speaks to Kelsier, he calls him Master Kelsier. And I do really appreciate that. And that's just part of his culture as well as the expectation of a terraceman. Where the Scar, I don't know if they are really expected to call anyone a mistress or a lord or anything, except for the Lord Ruler. So, yeah. But it was also good to see the culture of the Scar as well, and I really appreciated that. In fact, the biggest positive I can give to this beautiful book is that it's not dull. Like, yes, I know, and you know, you can absolutely come back to me and say, well, Mr. Francy, you just said that towards the end of the book there was a bit of a lull. Yes, there was a lull, but that lull is only a con because of everything else in the book. Because everything else is of such a high standard, the lull is noticeable. In a standard book, the lull would have been great. It would have been better than probably the rest of the book. So it's still well executed. It's just compared to the the epicness of the novel and what you're used to suddenly have it be a little slow. I didn't really like that. It takes an incredibly long time to get to the castle, but I'm not upset with that because any time I would even start to wonder, how close are we to getting to the castle, they introduced a new magical element, or Vin was being trained in this or that, or having a one-on-one with someone who was teaching us something else about the magic system, about the world building. Like, we would learn things about the world building, we would learn things about the Lord Ruler. things like that. Speaking of which, one of the biggest positives and pros of this book is the reveal of the Lord Ruler and that logbook. Okay, seriously. I don't remember the last time I read a book and went while reading it. And with this book, today alone, I probably did it about 20 times and my mouth got wider and wider each time. Like, seriously, it was amazing. So, we are led to believe that, as you know if you've read it, and if you haven't read it, we're led to believe that there is a logbook that CZ translates into their native tongue that they can read, and that it's about the Lord Ruler. And so we and the members of the thieving crew are reading this to see if they can ascertain any type of information that will assist them in overthrowing the final empire. Because we're led to believe it's the Lord Ruler's log all this time, it was such an amazing plot twist to find out, actually, no. It's not about the Lord Ruler at all. In fact, the person that was meant to become the Lord Ruler was killed by the actual current, before he died, Lord Ruler. That was an amazing twist. Wow. What's his name? Marsh. For those of you who don't know, Marsh is Kelsia's brother. We meet him a couple of times. Great guy. Yeah, really smart guy. Very similar to Kelsia, whose nickname is Kel. Kelsia in many ways. Excuse me. Marsh dies, or at least we're led to believe that Marsh dies, but then suddenly in the final battle between Vin and the Lord Ruler, Marsh appears. I had a reaction to that too. It's like, oh my god, he's alive! The only thing that would have gotten to me more than Marsh being alive was if Kelsia ended up being alive. Now, again, as I said, I get why Kelsia can't be alive. I do get that. It makes sense. I totally understand why he had to die, and I'm fine with it. But if by some miracle happenstance Kelsia ended up being alive, oh my god, I would have had a really massive reaction to that because of just how much I love Kelsia. I love Elend, the fact that he is a nobleman and he wants to do right. I love the fact that Elend became king. I think it surprised me more that Elend became king because I think I just assumed that either Vin would become queen, or if because she was a female, or if because she was too young she couldn't become queen, then one of the other members of the thieving crew will become king. You know who would have made a good king? Sazed. Sazed would have made an amazing king. But I don't at all mind that it was Elend that became king, because Elend's a great guy and he wants everything to change for the Scar, and that's great. Let's talk about, what's her name? Oh gosh, I can't remember her surname. Alaria? The battle scene between Vin and her, amazing. And the fact that Vin beats her, so satisfying. Oh my god. So good. Yeah, and so whether it was seeing her at the ball or the politicking side with all the houses and how they work and how that's going, the standard plot of what they're trying to do in order to prepare to overthrow the Empire, learning about the magic, the different types of magic, how to use the magic, the limitations of the magic, all of this was amazing. It was just such a great read. And I was so consumed by this book. It wasn't hard to pick up, which may not surprise you, and this may not surprise you either, but it was extremely tough every time I had to put it down. It physically ached every time I had to put the book down, because I didn't want to. I never wanted to put the book down. But that's okay. It is what it is. I cried. Not when Kelsia died. I was mad when Kelsia died. But I'm trying to remember the moments that I cried and why I did. Oh, yeah. When Vin defeats the Lord Ruler and everyone is applauding her outside, that was my first moment. I lost it. I started full on crying because I was going from thinking of how long do I have? Okay. I was going from thinking, oh wow, she defeated him, and I was really happy for her, to, oh my god, the Scar are free, and oh my god, I just started crying. Freedom for the Scar. Oh, bless the Scar. So yeah, that just, it added another element to it. Brandon Sanderson's writing is, from what I have read, which I will admit, probably 90% of what I've read is young adult. And I have not read an epic fantasy book prior to this one. But, so, we have to keep that in mind when I say this. But Brandon Sanderson's writing style is the best writing style. It is emotional for me, the reader. So there's a difference between a writer writing an emotional story versus it getting an actual physical reaction out of me. I can absolutely read books and know that I should feel a certain way, and I might feel sad for someone. Doesn't mean I'm going to cry. But in the emotional moments, I burst into tears. In the funny moments, I burst into laughter. And that's thanks to Brandon Sanderson, because he's just so good. He's so good. Now, the second last page, the reason why I got emotional, and I was talking about this in the non-spoiler, there's a part where it mentions Kelsia. I'm going to find it so I can read it. Okay, so in my book there are 643 pages, and this is actually on page 641, so I did get that wrong. But I'm just going to read this paragraph. Vin smiled. Kel would be angry with us, you know. He did all this work, and we just turned around and put a nobleman on the throne. Sazed shook his head. But there is something more important to consider, I think. We didn't just put a nobleman on the throne. We put a good man on the throne. A good man, Vin said. Yes, I've known a few of those now. The reason I cried with this was because, bless her for saying, he'll be angry with us, he did all this work for the sake of the Scar, as I told you in part 1, if you haven't read it before. He did all this for the Scar, and they've put a nobleman on the throne. But I love the response of Sazed. But there is something more important to consider, I think. We didn't just put a nobleman on the throne, we put a good man on the throne. And to me, good man is, if you want to succinctly describe Kelsia in as few words as possible, it's good man. And I just had a moment of, he'll be looking down on them going, you did good, kid. You put a good man on the throne. It's like, oh my god. But then that final line at the end. Oh. Sorry. The final page in this book is of the next book. So I need to find the actual page, 643. Okay. He smiled. He is Ellen Venture, and he's in a room with Vin, and they're embracing each other. He being Ellen. He smiled, throwing back his chair and grabbing her in a firm embrace. Vin closed her eyes, simply feeling the warmth of being held, and realized that was all she ever really wanted. Oh my god! Burst into tears because yes! Despite the fact that she's a Mistborn and she has all these awesome powers, despite the fact that she has grown so much and she has come so very far, all she ever wanted, what are we playing here? Let's go back to it. All she ever wanted was the warmth of being held. Oh my god. Brandon Sanderson, I owe you my life. I do. This book is probably, and I don't know, I could be wrong, but the way I see it anyway, this book's probably the only book that will ever have 3 parts to a one review of this book, because of just how amazing it is. This is a very special book, and I'm not being paid to say this. I'm not making it up or anything like that. It just really is. It touched me in a way that, that no book ever has before. So I feel incredibly blessed to have read Mistborn. So for those of you wondering what I'm going to be doing with the Well of Ascension, I don't have it in this room with me, I have it in my office, but I am definitely going to read book 2. Absolutely. I can't not read book 2. But what I do need to do is I need to take a break from the Mistborn world. I said this in my reading vlog that I planned on finishing on Wednesday. It's still Monday here, but anyway. So I finished it early. But regardless of when I finished this, I needed to have a week, 2 weeks. I needed to have a break, 2 weeks away from the Mistborn world to just read some other things and to just take a break and then go into book number 2. It's not that I don't want to read book number 2 or I don't feel enticed to read book number 2, because I do. I want to pick up book number 2 right now. You have no idea. I just want to pick it up right now and start reading. But I also want to really enjoy reading this series for what I feel I'm going to say is the first time, because I feel like I'm going to read it many times. And I will be able to enjoy it more and savor it more if I take a couple of weeks to break away from Mistborn, focus on some other things that may or may not be as good. I don't think any book is going to reach this level that I read. If it does, wow. Because Brandon Sanderson, my dear friend, you have set an incredibly high bar. And it's going to take a lot for any book to rival this one for me. But I just need to take a break in order to savor this book, refresh by reading a couple of other things, but it will definitely be, The Well of Ascension will definitely be on my March TBR, and knowing me, the 1st of March, I will be grabbing The Well of Ascension and just plowing through it. But for now, it's... Okay, my phone just seems to be flashing a little bit. I do apologize for that. Sorry, I apologize for the flashing, and I don't edit my videos, so I'm so sorry that you had to see that. Yeah, so I will definitely start Well of Ascension on the 1st of March. I'm sure I will. But for now, just going to take a little bit of a break and read some other things. I hope you enjoyed my review. If you want to talk about Mistborn, talk about it below. I will talk to you about it anytime. Anytime anyone wants to talk about Mistborn, I will be up to discuss it with you, because it's just so amazing and it has a very big spot in my heart. It really does. So thank you, Brandon Sanderson, and if you've watched all 3 parts of my review on Mistborn, thank you for sitting with me. And I know that I don't edit my videos, and so that's not a quick and snappy review, but if you love this book as much as I do, I hope you appreciate me taking my time to actually marinate in this book, because if you've read it, you get it. And if you haven't, as the booktuber that I follow says, and I agree, if you haven't, you probably will like this book. Actually, check that. You will love this book, and you definitely should read it. And I agree. If you have not read this book, and you love fantasy, and you love magic in fantasy, oh my gosh, you need to read this book. It is just amazing. And I know I've given it away, but you should still read it anyway and see what emotional reaction you get out of it. Definitely read this book. It's great as a gift. If you know anyone who loves fantasy, buy this book as a gift for them if they haven't read it yet. Trust me, they're going to have a lot of love for you by giving them this book, because it's just so good. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Brandon Sanderson. I will just, I've thanked Brandon Sanderson that many times, but I will say it one more time. Thank you, Brandon Sanderson, for writing this book, because it has revolutionized reading for me. And that's a massive statement that I never thought I'd make, but it absolutely has. You've set a tall bar, my friend. But what a time to be alive. Really, I didn't think I would ever have a review like this for any of the books I read this year. Wow, wow, wow. So, if you want to read it, here's the details. Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. Alright guys, letting you go with peace, blessings, and so much love. Any comments, thoughts, and or questions, please do leave them below. I'll talk to you about Mistborn anytime, any day, anywhere. And yeah, gonna take a break from this now and go and read something else. But thank you for watching. Mwah. Bye guys. Bye.